Hey, so if you don't mind, I think we're going to get started, and I'll hand it over to Ken after I do some housekeeping notes, and then I will admit any kind of people who might be coming in last minute to the webinar. So let us get started. So I just want to start off by thanking everybody for joining our webinar today. We are very excited to welcome you all and also to our guest presenters. My name is Kristen Matthews, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager with BBB Atlantic, and I will be moderating the webinar today. We're very excited to welcome Dan McLeod and Ken Grant from BBB Accredited Business Dunvegan Loyalty Builders, who will be presenting to you today. And before I hand it over to them, I did want to touch on some housekeeping items. So if you could please, except for obviously Ken and Dan, if you could please keep your video and your microphones off for the presentation. And that way it just helps with the bandwidth. And obviously while Dan is presenting, just to keep your microphones off, please. And if you do have a question throughout the presentation, please feel free to type that into the chat box. I know that myself and Ken will both be moderating the chat, and if there's a question that comes up that Dan can answer throughout the presentation, then Ken will bring that up to him. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat box, and we will either answer them throughout the presentation or at the end of the presentation. And just to let everybody know, this session obviously is being recorded, and it will be sent out to everybody afterwards. And there also will be a survey at the end of the presentation with a few feedback questions about today's webinar, and we strongly encourage you to take just a moment to fill that out as well. So with those housekeeping notes, I would like to throw it over to Ken Grant, who will introduce the presentation, introduce Dan as well.
Thanks, Kristen, and thanks to the Better Business Bureau Atlantic for this opportunity. Dan and I are the co-owners of Dunvegan Loyalty Builders, and I'm going to just cut right to the chase. I'll give you a little overview. There are two fatal flaws that Dan and I have seen over the past 20 years of working in data analytics. Two fatal flaws that prevent owners and managers from making fully informed decisions. First, software packages collect tons of information. You've got a lot of it, but they don't talk to each other. You do know where the information is, but you can't link those pieces together. The second fatal flaw is that each piece of software presents you with data in pre-formatted reports. You only really get snapshots, and it takes lengthy manual work to dig any deeper. I'm going to now introduce Dan as a former senior sales manager with a phone company, and he's worked with J.D. Power and Associates and one of the Burlington-based auto consulting businesses to work in over 600 auto dealerships across the country on sales and customer relationships. Now, we're going to be talking to you today as if you were the users or the consumers of the reports. That's technical talk. You're receiving the reports and you're using them to make decisions. But we want you to know that the reports are not magic. They don't happen automatically with a piece of software. They're built. But having said that, Dan's going to show you just a little bit about the technical side, a little tiny bit so you understand where it comes from. But having said all of that, your tasks can be automated. We do want you to see how easy it is to use interactive reporting and how fast they can respond to your requests. So with that, Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Ken. Let's see if we can get this to work the way I expect it to. We got the PowerPoint on the screen, Ken?
Yes, you're there.
Okay, good. All right, and I have something that there to the side. Good morning. I planned the weather this way because it's much better to be online right now than it is to be outside. Not, but let's go from there. So this webinar is about business intelligence skills for owners and managers. Business intelligence, I don't like the term. Knowledge discovery is my preferred term, but I can't get the industry to change, so we'll use business intelligence. We'll be using two products today. One is Excel, and almost all of you will have that on your desktops. There are equivalents. Google has a spreadsheet as well, but Excel has some powers that we're going to be showing you today. And another Microsoft product called Power BI Desktop, Power, P-O-W-E-R, desktop. And it's a free download from Microsoft. It has some amazing abilities, and the price is certainly right. Free is always better. We're going to look at two things in particular. That's mapping your customers, putting them on a map so you can see a picture of where your customers are. And then from there, you can decide what you want to do with that information. In these days of advertising, where you might be using Google to promote your ads in particular areas, postal codes are important. And the mapping of your customers tells you where you are and where you should be advertising on those mediums. And the other area we're going to look at quickly is managing your numbers over time. We can all pretty well, out of our accounting systems, get a report that says how much money came in and how much money went out. But very often you have a forecast of how much you plan to spend or how much you plan to bring in, and marrying the two, actuals and forecast, generally doesn't go easily. Well, we'll show you how it can be done easily. So there's basically, as long as you've got a current version of Excel, and that's 2016 or above, you probably don't have to buy any software to use any of these tools. So let's get started. Okay, Ken has introduced the two of us. We're home-based businesses because we're on the road all the time. There's no sense having an office, but we're local. We do training and consulting in data analytics for small to medium organizations. We're based in Halifax. We incorporated in 2005, but we've been doing this for over 20 years. And we have a national footprint with a focus on Atlantic. We provide our services on 3 levels. One is train using generic material, and you, the learner, have to adapt the material to apply it to your organization. The second is turnkey. We come in, build the reports, and show you how to maintain and run those particular reports. And the third approach, which I particularly like, is we come in and train your staff to build the reports while we assist. And at this point, we sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we actually use your data, so that your staff will be building the reports using your information. It's a little bit longer to learn, but once we leave, you probably don't need us. However, we're there if you need assistance and so forth. Can you learn these products yourself? Yes, absolutely. It's time consuming, but there's plenty of information out there on how to learn these, and there's lots of books. So we talk about data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Well, we've all got data. Everybody's got receipts hanging around somewhere, and we enter them into some sort of accounting system, and we might have a contact management system that manages our customers. Most car dealerships have that as well. And when it's pulled together so that you can do something with it, it's information. But if you can get that information to a point where you can slice and dice and manipulate the information to say, well, show me just this segment and just this approach or across this time period, then you've got some knowledge. And the knowledge becomes, aha, I can do that. Well, what happened there? And you need the ability within the knowledge to drill down. Where did that number come from? What transactions caused that number to appear? And with that, if you get the knowledge, you can start to think about how you're going to use the data, and that's wisdom. That's where we want to be. And that says, okay, based on what's happened in the past, we want to make a decision to do this or to do that. So wisdom is the ultimate goal with all of this. So as an example, this is a spreadsheet from the government, federal and provincial both, of Atlantic coast commercial fishing landings in 2015, and it's in thousands of dollars. And this is probably one of the ugliest spreadsheets I've ever had to work with. But if you look at it, you've got the numbers, it's there, it breaks it out by province and then sometimes by Maritimes and Gulf and whatever. And then there are these ugly little X's, which means we have a number, but for competitive reasons, we're not sharing it. And then you have the numbers. Well, there are actually about 30 of these spreadsheets on the website, one for each year in dollars. And there's another 30 that shows you the kilotons that was landed. So if you want to calculate price per kilogram or pound, if you still work in pounds, you got a lot of work to do. And that becomes time consuming traditionally. Well, it isn't with these products. And what we've been able to do is pull it together. And this is a spreadsheet where we've actually pulled that together. It's just showing the snapshot of 3 years. It doesn't matter. But the first segment is value of the landings. The second is weight in tons. And then it's the price per kilogram. So you can actually see it there. But with the product, the Power BI desktop product, you can go a level further. And this is where you get into the really exciting part of working with the data. This is exactly the same data, but run through this Power BI desktop, and you can see the data graphically. Now, each of these charts and pie charts and bar charts is in fact just a spreadsheet. And in the working document, you can change it back to text. So if you like to work in text, you can do that. If you like to work in graphs, you can leave it in this version. And we have an actual working copy of this. So if you wanted to see it at some time, I can show it to you. So that's an example of how you move from data to information to knowledge. Here's another one. This is a SAGE accounting system report. You're probably using some sort of accounting system. SAGE is very common in Atlantic Canada. QuickBooks is the other one. And if you pull a report, this is what you get in text. And it's very well organized, but very difficult to do something with. So when you're looking at it, there's all kinds of extraneous information here that if you're leaving it as text and you're going to leave it in this form, fine. But in fact, if you wanted to say, well, how much came in for this or how much came in for that, it's not there. It's too difficult to work around. So you can pull this same form of data and pull it into something like this. And this one is an Excel spreadsheet. And you can see here that you've got on the left-hand side, this is a charity example. This is all fake data too. Don't try to read something into it. But here are the years, and we've got 17 years represented here, 18, I suppose. Campaign names, so I picked some of the campaigns out. And you can see the bar graphs showing it across the years, and it says, okay, run for the cause is clearly something that's important. And in the last year of the report, in this case 2017, we've seen a drop in run for the cause for some reason. Don't know what it is, but you might want to investigate further. Whereas if you were just looking at a field of numbers, you would probably not pick that out as being something that would be important. What's very significant is major gifts is growing over time, so there might be something there that you want to look at further. Okay, this is the Power BI version of that same data, and it's showing it graphically. And you can see that run for the cause is a big deal here. You can also see in the same area, we've got donations by province, so that could be customers by province or some sort of geographic decision. And then distinct donors, total donors, and average donation are numbers derived from that. So this one screen is giving you a whole bunch more that you can look at and say, okay, am I interested in what's going on here? And then you can narrow it down as you see fit. So here's another one, and this is again from provincial government website, and it's the number of kids enrolled in schools in 2021 broken out by grade. And it shows you the school name, the division. So 059, if you look down here at the bottom, is the Tri-County region, the southern end of Nova Scotia. Each of the schools that are listed there in elementary, junior, and senior high. And this is good for snapshot purposes if you wanted to snapshot. But if you wanted to say, well, how does that compare with last year? How does that compare over the last 5 years? this isn't here, and you've got to do something, a lot of work in general in the past to say, okay, well, tell me what's actually been going on. So using these products, here it is in a spreadsheet, and it's just a bar graph. I didn't bother to change the sort order here, so grade 10 and 11 and 12 are buried after grade 1 and before grade 2. But you can see the dispersion of total public students up to 2020. What's interesting is the pre-primary has been skyrocketing, and that's one of the reasons that the counts have been going up, because of course the ones that were here in 2016 are now in grade 1 in 2017 and grade 2 in 2018 and so forth across this. So you can start to see the mix of what's going on. But if you really want to see what's going on with all of this information, you want to put it on a map. And this map is built into the Power BI desktop product. And the center of each of these pie charts is the postal code center for the school. So that's using postal code and actually plotting it as the center point of that. And within that, if you look at this particular one, and this one isn't live, but we'll show some live ones in a few minutes. You can see that in grade 12 in the Glace Bay High School, in the year 2021, there were 223 kids and students. They're probably not kids at this point in grade 12. They're 16, 17, 18 years old. But you can see it across time. And the other pieces of the pie chart are in fact the other grades. And there's this little narrow piece in this particular one, and that's probably the graduates who've come back to enhance their learning. So it's the same information in the last 3 charts, but it's presented differently, and that's what we want to get at with these products. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. This might tell you a whole bunch more about what's going on here. And of course, the size of the pie chart is relative to the size of the total number of students. The other thing you've got here is a counter that says students on map. If you added up all of the dots and all the pieces of pie in the pie charts that are here, it would add up 3,165 students. And as you go through and manipulate this, and we'll be doing one, these numbers will change to suit whatever you're doing. Okay, why Microsoft? Well, it turns out that there's a company called Gartner that evaluates software, all kinds of different software, but in the business intelligence software, they've evaluated, what have we got, about 25 or 30 dots here, and they're evaluating them relative to each other. And in the upper quadrant, you've got the leaders with the ability to execute and the vision of where they're going. You've got only 3 products: Microsoft, Tableau, and Qlik. And the text behind this tells you why they're rated this way. Microsoft is rated the highest from the point of view of ability to execute on business intelligence and their vision of where they're going and what they're doing. Tableau is second, Qlik is third. The world leader 10 or 15 years ago was now IBM, but it was called Cognos. And it used to be the only player here in the upper right quadrant. And over time, it's moved down here, not because the product has lost power, but it's lost power relative to its competition. And so that's the dividing line here. What's interesting about Microsoft is there's plenty of room to grow at the top, and there's plenty of room to improve their vision of where they're going. So this is a relative chart, and it changes every year. So Microsoft has better execution, better vision. The big difference between Tableau and Microsoft, and Tableau is in Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada, Tableau is expensive. It's not inexpensive software, very powerful, but there's a price tag associated with it. And Qlik is the third player. I don't believe they have much of a presence in Atlantic Canada, but they've just recently changed their pricing model, and people are starting to look at, well, if I'm going to pay this new price and it's clearly higher, how's that doing relative to Tableau and Microsoft? So people are starting to think about whether they should stay with Qlik. Will they change? It's hard to get some players to change, especially if they've got lots of reports out there. Okay, so that's that. What's in Excel that was important? Well, it's familiar and comfortable. It's got some expanded capabilities with Power Pivot, and most people don't even know Power Pivot is available or whether it's built into that. Power Pivot is safe. Once you bring the numbers into Power Pivot, you cannot accidentally change them. You have to go back to the source of the number. And we've all experienced, oh my gosh, I just overwrote a couple of lines of numbers there, and now I got to fix it. Well, once you bring your data into Power Pivot, you cannot change it. It's fixed. You have to go back to the original document and then refresh it. Refreshing is easy, but it keeps you from making those silly mistakes. Not all versions of Power Pivot, but since 2016, they all have the following, and people don't know they've got it. Easy to use, and you can navigate with the mouse. In fact, when I'm demoing the actual products, I'll tell you when I'm touching the keyboard. The rest of the time I'm using the mouse. Left click and right click, but nonetheless, just the mouse. It links to data sources and updates easily, and I'll actually be updating a couple of the files so you can see it's dead simple. Linking to the data sources is a big deal because it can very often draw directly from your databases if you choose to have it do that. There's something called a data model that's been built in, and it's an extra layer of reporting that's built into Microsoft, easy to use, and we'll be using it throughout the day, the webinar. And if you want to move the data model over to the other product, Power BI is well able to bring that data in and use it. And then there's two additional pieces. There's an M language, heaven forbid somebody would name anything M. And if you've ever written SQL, to pull your data from something, this is the modern version of SQL. SQL is a 50-year-old piece of software that allows you to pull data from your data sources, whatever they might be. And somebody at Microsoft finally updated it, and they've called it M. So M is built in. It's been there since 2016, and honestly, almost no one knows it's there. And there's a whole bunch more, and if you've ever used the functions in Excel, when they brought this out, they added 86 new functions to this that you may or may not want to use, depending on how comfortable you are using some of the functions built into this thing. And if you go down through the Power BI desktop, you'll see it's exactly the same thing, except that the advanced abilities in Power BI take time to learn. The basics are there, you can use them, no problem at all. Some of the advanced ones take time to learn. It's free to use and download. There is a paid version that has expanded capabilities. Almost all of the customers we work with, the free version is perfectly fine, and they use that. It's also the rapidly evolving product, and there's 11 updates a year, one a month, except in December. And that means that they're listening to the users and saying, hey, I want to be able to do this. And they add that to the list. And every month, there's a major shift in what this product can do. And I spend a couple of days a month learning what's new because somebody will ask for it. The general user doesn't matter. You won't bump into that thing because it's an advanced, usually it's advanced. And they've built in, we've all heard about artificial intelligence. It's actually starting to show up in this product. And they recently, in the last few months, have added natural language questions. So you can say, show me, you can type in, show me expenses for gasoline over the last 6 months, and you just type that in and it will create a result for you. It's pretty exciting to see how it works. Not there yet. but getting there. And if you build a data model in Power BI desktop, and you cannot export it back to Excel. You can export the information and rebuild it in Excel, but it takes some time. So a lot of technology there. There's lots of resources out there, plenty of books on Amazon and chapters on these two subjects. Microsoft has tons of information. There are blogs, videos, user groups, and YouTube. It was interesting, 4 years ago, I couldn't find more than 3,000 videos on Power BI desktop on YouTube. There are now 2.1 million of them, most of them useless. But you got to start somewhere and then go for the blogs. Okay, so we talk about different kinds of users. Users is the consumer. They're the one using the reports. They're going to one using the mouse. And there'll be an author somewhere in the organization, someone who built the report. That could be the same person. Very often it is in a small company. Query writer. If you have a database person, you might have someone build the extracts that you're looking for in the data. And then in very large organizations, you'll have a database administrator, DBA, who will manage, maintain the database and keep you from touching it. Their job seems to be a gatekeeper, and they will tell you what information you can have. And generally, in large organizations, they will export the data for you, and you never get to touch it. But in small mediums, and that's probably what we're dealing with here today, you're usually a user or an author. Okay, so we're going to use an example in particular, and it's vehicle sales on Prince Edward Island. I had to pick an area, and this is a demo. We'll assume that you're looking for good trade-ins among past customers. I'm using Ford models randomly applied to random addresses. This is not real data in any stretch of the imagination, except that I needed to have addresses that were real because I wanted to put them on a map. And be looking at two versions of the report, Excel and Power BI desktop. And again, all the data is fake. I've been told I can use synthetic or synthesized, but fake gives the picture out there. So let's see if we can switch over and get into Excel. And Ken, I'll need you to say that, yes, you can see this. Can you see this, or do I have to?
Not yet.
Okay, so I've got to do this in this particular piece of software. I have to get back to, come on. Zoom.
While Dan is finding the file and bringing it up in the display, don't hesitate in asking any questions. This was Dan's overview of the whole the field in terms of data analytics, and now we get to the really great part, which will be the demonstration of how fast and how well it works.
Did that come up?
Not yet, Dan.
Not yet. Okay. Screen share. Sales tracking example. Let's see if it comes up this time.
There you are.
Oh,
You got it.
Finally. Okay, thank you.
And Dan, I just want to intervene for a second. There's about a half hour left.
Thank you. That's about right. Okay, so this is a typical spreadsheet that you might see somewhere in your organization. It's a dump from somewhere, and your task is to figure out how much each person sold and what you want to do. And this is, I'm going to show the basic pivot table. It's been there for 30 years. We find about 10% of the people have heard of a pivot table and about 2% actually use one. But here's how it works. So up here you have the term insert. You're going to click on that. By the way, I picked one cell, doesn't matter where it is in this. Insert pivot table from the table or range. It draws a dotted line around it. It says that it's from A1 to H18, and I want to put it on a new worksheet. And the answer is yes, I do. But before I do, look at the titles across the top here, because we're going to see them again in a second. Click OK. And here are those column titles. So I want to build a report that gives me a summary of who sold what. Well, let's put the dollar value in there and we'll format it to dollars, currency with 2 decimal places. Okay. And now it's $4,553.10. Well, that was on the other sheet. But let's take the sales name and we'll put that on rows. Now it's broken up by person and we want to take date and put it in the columns. And there it is. There's your report. I'll make it a little bit bigger. This is a basic pivot table. Been there for 30 years. And if you can't find a reason to use this, you've got to stop and think about what you've actually been doing. So what else can you do with this? You've got the names, you've got the subtotals. And by the way, if you look at the plus here and break it out, you can see that you can break it out by day within the month. So it's pretty good that way. What did they sell? Well, you can add that below the sales name and you can see that Bill sold each one of those items and you can see the day that he sold them and so on. And this is a basic pivot table. It's that easy. I've sent Kristen this example and the instructions on how you build this report. We could send it to you, but if you want to deal with Kristen, she can actually pass it along to you. And it's step-by-step instructions on how to do it. But we've got one other thing that we want to add into this. And that's, we also have the employee's actual name and the employee number because you want to join the two. Now, in the past, you've had to do a VLOOKUP and say, okay, find the real name and actual name. But using these products, and I'm now going to use Power Pivot, I'm going to take this and I'm going to take Power Pivot and I'm going to say, add this to the data model. And now it's in the data model. So that was easy. That was just a couple of mouse clicks. And it's the same information, but now it's on a tab down here. So now I can go back over here and I can say, all right, let's go back to the data. There's the range of data. And I want that in the data model. And this is okay. And now I've got this in the data model and you can see it's the same information. But using the diagram here, I can pull employees in the table and I can join the sales name, which was Sue or whatever, to the common name over here. And now I can build a report that has both sets of names in it because I have both sets of tables here. So I can pull out first name actual, common name actual. And now I can, from the table 2, pull the dollar value and over there. So now I'm using their common first name and last name. There we go. And I can reformat this so that it puts them all on the same row. And there we have the same numbers, but I've got Bill and so forth. But I probably want the employee number as well because I'm going to have to put something into payroll. So there's the payroll numbers. So what I've done is joined 2 tables from 2 different sources and made this very easy to figure out. And that's the essence of what we're going to be doing with this. So Ken, I'm going to switch over to another one. Let's see if it will allow me to do this. Did this switch to a larger spreadsheet? No.
Not yet.
Okay, let's stop sharing for a minute.
Yep.
And come on. Where did you go? Stop sharing. And I'll start sharing again. And this time I'll pull up this spreadsheet. There. We in business?
There you go. Okay, you got it.
Okay. So in this case, this is the fake data of sales. I've got, I believe, around 6,200 rows of data. And this is a download from whatever system you're using to track customer sales. Reynolds and Reynolds is one of the common systems out there, and there's a bunch more. But you can go through and you can filter this data and you can sort it, of course. You can say, well, just give me the Charlottetown customers. And down here, it'll tell you there are 4,191 of them. Oops. You can say, okay, I only want to see escapes. So it'll do that. But you're spending all your time trying to go through the data and figure it out. And what you actually want to do is pull it into a pivot table. So again, pivot tables start with insert pivot table from table or range. We'll put it on a new spreadsheet. And now we can look at this and say, okay, well, let's look at city in the rows. Let's look at model year across the top. And let's count the number of IDs. Instead of sum, we'll change this to count. And there's your count by location, by year. Well, that's fine, but you want more in here, so let's expand this out a little bit. And let's come back to this and say, well, I want to look at model. So I'm going to right click on this and add a slicer. Now a slicer is the same as that drop down that we used, except now I can see the list. And if I only want to see escapes, there are only escapes. And you notice this thing updated essentially instantly. But if I wanted to see edge and escape, I could pull edge and escape, and there's the sum of the two. So we can do that. Well, turns out I actually still want model year, so I can turn on this and add that as a slicer. So I got model year over here. And maybe I want to pick out the category, which is the style of vehicle, and I can pull that over here and add that as a slicer. So now I've got that as an SUV, and if I pick an edge, it's still an SUV, but if I pick an F-150, it changes to pickup here, and all of these titles change. So relatively easy to pull it into this, and rather than go through all the formatting, let's switch over to this, and this is a little bit larger in this. So if you wanted to see 2015s to 2018s, you could, there they are, 15, 16, 17, 18. And if I only wanted to see hatchbacks, I can move. So I'm now moving through the data. I've added postal code, and I know that C1A, 1B, and 1C are Charlottetown. So I can say, just give me those 3 postal codes. And this number is changing and updating. And so I look at it and say, well, what are these 44? Whoop, sorry. What are these 12? And there are the 12 sales. And now I can use that for whatever it was I had in mind. So I can switch through the data. Did that show, Ken? So you're
yes,
looking
it did.
12 and,
yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we're switching around and looking at the data and able to use it extensively. Now, none of this data has names on it because it's hard enough to fake 6,000 sales with addresses. I'm not going to fake 6,000 names, but you could actually pull up the full mailing address of all of those people and send them emails or letters or whatever you happen to be using at that time. So we just flashed through data. And is it easy to build one of these? Well, sure. The hard part was faking the data. If you've got real data, building this out is just about as fast as what I did it with that particular one. So let's look at the same data, and we know this isn't going to work. I'll pick a new share here, and I will pick the Power BI desktop, which is a map. Can you tell me if that came up, Ken?
You're up, Dan.
Hey, we're working. Okay, so this is a map of PEI with all of those 6,208 sales. It's the same spreadsheet, but now it's on a map of PEI, and this map is interactive. So across the top, I've got the categories, I've got the years, and I've got the models down the side. So let's say I wanted to look at pickup trucks. That has changed, so only pickup trucks are there, but I only want to look at sales from 2018, and I only want to look at F-150 Cruise or regular cab. And if I hover over one of these dots, it tells me the address and the pickup. But of course, if you're a car dealership, you would probably add kilometers, because if they were in for service, you would know the last time they were in for kilometers. You may add the person's name, because Maybe it's somebody you really don't want to call or deal with, or maybe it's somebody that you know is there. Maybe you want to add the salesperson's name. Whatever you like, it can be added into this black box. And if you have the data to start with, well, how tight can you pull this map in? I got to tell you, it's about as tight as you can get. Those blocks are actually houses. This happens to be the center of the postal code, but 48 Scott Street is one of these houses. I don't know which side of the street. You can actually get this to go to the actual street address, but there is a limit to how far I want to go when I'm doing demos in this. This software that's doing this is absolutely free, and it is Microsoft, so you can pretty well trust the product. But to give you an idea of what it's actually like, we can actually turn this back into a spreadsheet, and there it is. So the data has not been lost, it's just been presented differently. And that is a pretty amazing piece of technology as far as I'm concerned. So let's move it back to a map because I don't want to forget where I am. So we've got the ability to manipulate and plot data. Can you learn to do this yourself? Sure. If we look at what's actually going on here, if we look at the map, you can see here that it's a map and the location is the postal code. And by the way, these are the headings from the spreadsheet columns: category, city, full address, ID number is used as a count, model, and postal code, the ones with the yellow boxes, are the ones that are shown on the map. And they are postal code, category, count, and then the tooltips is including all of these down here. And if you wanted to add or delete one of these, X takes it out, and you just, what have we not got in there? We haven't got province, so we can grab province and drop it in there. And now every time you stop over one of these dots, the last entry here is province. So easy enough to do and go from there. So that's one way you can start to visualize your customer data. And Ken, I would like to switch over to the other one now, which is the territory, new share, and
We still got the map up yet.
Okay, let's see if it comes up now. How did I do?
You've got it.
Good. All right, so this is another type of chart and graph, and what we've got here is this is revenue and expenses for a fake charity, and revenue expenses actual and revenue expenses budget, and the difference between the two. And what we've done is just pulled in a budget, which happens to be from spreadsheets. We've got actuals, which you see over here on the right says is from Sage, whatever accounting system it is, and it's the actuals from the accounting system. And these are the columns that we're pulling out of here, except for these ones, which are calculations. Expenses actual, fiscal year to date, expenses actual, most recent transaction is this little box that says, it gives you a fair warning that you might not be looking at the most recent information. So it's there so you can do that. And all of the data is presented here. It's April, May, June. It's the first quarter. They have a fiscal year that starts April 1st. You can say, okay, I only want to see April data. And all of these charts and graphs update to April, or then I want to see May, and then I want to see June. Or I'd like to see all 3 months, which is where we started. And you can see that. So the first one is an overview. And a lot of people like charts and graphs, but in the accounting world that I've worked in with accountants, they want to see the numbers. And very often they want to see it to the penny. And when you're dealing with $100,000, I don't think 15 cents or 20 cents is going to make any difference, but that's what they want to see. So we can actually do that too. And this is just simply an overview. I just noticed a spelling mistake. I've got V, capital V, capital A there instead of VA. And maybe they just want to see a department. They've got 4 departments in most charities. And if you want to see just philanthropy, you could pick that. And this actually changed. I don't know if you saw that change. So let's go back. So we've got all of them, and I'll do it again. Watch these numbers here. So if I pick out philanthropy, it's dropped to 200,000, and you can see how quickly this thing updates. And again, if you wanted to see the detail, you could click on this and it would give you every transaction that caused that number to be there. So you could click on the 60,000 number and say, I want to know exactly what caused the 60,000 to occur, and you will get the detail of every single transaction from the accounting software package, wherever that is. What's interesting about this is it accumulates actuals for the month, and then it does a budget for the balance of the year. The system is smart enough to say, okay, I've switched months, so therefore I'll go forward. In this case, it doesn't break down part month, but in fact, you could build it that way. And what's interesting is most actual transactions are daily. Most budget transactions are monthly. And normally systems won't allow you to match day and month. They're 2 different levels of granularity, but in fact, you can move through those. So that's the overview page, but we've also built a page that talks about just revenues. And here's the revenues. And this one is interesting because it's fiscal year to date, and it's budget and actual. So you can see that the dark blue is budget and the light blue is actual, and it's revenue. So you can see that fiscal month 1, which was April, the actuals far outstripped the budget, the expected revenue. And that's a good news thing. But as it accumulates, the differential at the end of the second fiscal month is less, because remember, this is fiscal in this one, so it's summing them up. By the end of the 3rd month, they're pretty equal. And the difference is $30,000 shortfall sorry, $30,000 more. Yeah, $30,000 shortfall in revenue versus budget. So it's starting to even out, but we're starting to lose ground. And we can see the sources here broken out. And if we click on this only, you see that this changed the lower graph. So these are actually interactive. And as you click on one, it's filtering down your data, so you're only looking at that piece of it. And if you hover over this, it says it's general revenues. If you hover over this one, it says the Nova Scotia chapter developed $84,000 in revenue. And in this one, its immemorials came in at 22,000, and it was 3.2%, 3.1% of the total. So you can start to see more detail of the level of this, and then look at it from this perspective. And if you were in business and this line was starting to happen, you would go, is it just that we got a big bunch in the beginning and now it's spreading out because it came in earlier than we expected, or are we in trouble? We don't know. But let's look at the expense one, and you see the same sort of charting. And expenses are always negative, so the line is down from the top. And we can see the different departments again. And if we, instead of picking them all, just pick philanthropy, we can see the expenses and actuals. We're in good shape there because we've got $35,000 that we did not spend from our budget. So we're in good shape because these are reversed. And again, you can look at it, Nova Scotia chapter, you can look at it and you get the bigger picture. So what we've got is, if you looked at just the accounting system and said, give me a report where I can move through the data like this, likely not going to happen. So it's important that we be able to do these things. Okay, so we've just covered off a whole bunch of information. There may be a question or two, and I'd like to open it up for questions. So let's stop sharing. and open it up for questions? Are we at that point?
I think you are, Dan.
Okay. Have
Yes,
we
I'm just
stopped?
I'm looking at the chat box now, no questions yet, but definitely encourage anyone to type it in the chat box, or you can even just unmute your microphone and ask the question as well. If there are no questions, you clearly did an amazing job at answering everybody's questions, Dan, throughout the presentation.
Is this where you all wake up?
Yeah, exactly.
What I have a thought that I'd like to share with all of the people on the call, that what we've noticed in when we work with our clients is they've been very concerned about their numbers, about their revenues and expenses. And when you see a system like this, which is able to pull in your numbers, first of all, there's a growing attention to tracking the numbers. Dan often says, if you haven't measured it, it hasn't happened. But in fact, they start thinking, oh gosh, we should have been tracking those numbers better. It's really important to say that when you start looking at the numbers and you understand the significance of them and you decide that you're going to follow in more detail, it's always on a go forward basis. You're starting to follow, you're starting to attend to things because you're starting to look at what are the factors and variables that impact the bottom line. We are always aware, and our clients are aware of increasing the revenue, but the other part is becoming aware of the expenses and how hidden expenses or apparently hidden expenses all factor in. All of them are important.
I have been asked in the past, because we have a couple of minutes here, is it difficult to extract data from your resources? And the answer is no. Both of these products have amazing interfaces built into them. You can tap into almost every kind of database that's out there. If you're using some of the automotive systems like Reynolds and Reynolds, they don't allow people tapping into the data unless you're willing to pay them, I think it's $25,000 for the software that lets you do that. But you can always extract data. I've worked with many service managers and said, okay, let's download all of your data. And they can do that. You have to write a little SQL thing to do it. And then we pull it into these products, and we're looking at it saying, okay, who hasn't been in, who's likely exceeded their oil change. Not too many people are looking for customers these days. They're having trouble finding technicians. But if you're looking for work, I worked with a car dealership in Ottawa where we differentiated their customers and started to treat them not as all the same. We had a category called road warriors, people who live in their vehicle, drive 50, 60, 70,000 kilometers a year. And we deliberately picked them out as a group and started to treat them differently. And boy, did they respond in a positive way. Okay, then we had another group of customers, we call them comfortable seniors. They drive 12, 15,000 kilometers a year. You see them twice a year for an oil change and changing tires. And the difference between those two groups of customers is astounding. The road warriors are extremely profitable. The last thing they want to do is be in the dealership, because when their vehicle's on the hoist, their office is closed. They're pacing in the waiting room, and they just want to get back on the road, and they don't care what the bill is. They just pay it, get out of there, and off they go. Or the comfortable senior, wonderful people to deal with, not really very profitable. And then so you start to treat them differently. And as we started to treat these different groups differently, we got the response we were looking for. Now, this was a large dealership. They sell about 2,000 cars a year. We actually added $1 million a year on the top line of their service business within a year. And it became almost 2 million within 3 years. And what that was finding out what their customers wanted and then moving from that. And another group that became very important were business professionals, and they were the doctors, lawyers, dentists, small business owners who had to be at work. So coming into the dealership was a major inconvenience. And what this Ottawa dealer did is he hired a bunch of university students, and they would go out to the vehicle, bring the vehicle in for service, and take it back and park it where it was. And they would exchange keys with the owner, and they would leave a copy of the bill on the seat so the customer could see that the oil change was done, and they charged for that service. And you know what? Those business professionals were pleased to pay the bill because it didn't interrupt their day. They could get to and stay at work. And those are the kinds of things that have actually dramatically improved their business and their customer relationships. And since if you are associated with one of the major brands, they survey your customers every time you do a service call. This dealership saw a substantial improvement in their overall customer satisfaction score. And of course, that translates to more sales, happier customers, and it's easy to make the next sale. So there is a difference, but it all came down to using these tools to get at the data, to understand, sort it, and be able to use it for something different. Now, if you're not in the business of looking for more customers these days, because you have no techs to do the work anyway, maybe that's not important, but there you are. Okay, so you can do a lot with this if you get started and want to use it.
Yeah, that's
Any
great,
questions?
Dan.
Well,
No questions as of
okay.
yet. No. So like I
All right.
said, I think you just did a great job just explaining everything. And yeah, thank you for that story because, here at BBB, we've obviously used Dunvegan services and used, been able to really, see our data in a different way and understand it and make better decisions. So I think a lot of businesses can really, benefit from what you've taught us here today. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, so is there any closing remarks from either Dan or Ken before we end?
I want to thank the Better Business Bureau for giving us the opportunity to present this. If you as the participants want to get a hold of us or the BBB to talk about it further, fine. We're not going to pressure you into buying services from us. We'd much rather share the information, and the more people who know about this, the easier it is for us to find customers. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Kristen, I just want to emphasize that we weren't selling or having anything, we're not really promoting software, it's an option. These are best practices, and we think that the small to mediums in Atlantic Canada can truly benefit from getting a handle on asking better questions and making more money. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And as Dan mentioned, he did send me some of his examples. So I will be sending out the webinar recording to everybody, hopefully by today or tomorrow. And I will, if you are interested in seeing Dan's examples, I will include my email in there, obviously, and you can reach out to me to get them. I will also include Dunvegan's email as well if you want to reach out to them for more information. But I will leave that up to everybody there. So yeah, just keep an eye out on your email for the webinar recording. And again, there will also be a quick survey at the end of the presentation just to get your feedback on this webinar here. And if you have any ideas for future webinars that we can host, we'd also love to hear from you as well. So with that, I will end the recording and just thank you all once again for joining us this morning. And again, thank you so much to Dan and Ken from Dunvegan for their presentation today. It was really great, and I know I learned a lot myself, so I will definitely be playing around with Excel later today.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.